So, over the course of this week, as I was looking at our gospel text and thinking about what it means to have compassion and trying to navigate how to bring that to all of us, I couldn't help but just try to think of something that we could all imagine. So imagine this. It is a Saturday afternoon, and you've been looking forward to it all week. It's time to kick back with the family and just have a family barbecue in the backyard. You've got the playlist queued up. You've got everybody prepared. You've got the grill at the right temp. And the smell of just seasoned burgers fills the air. But then, what comes next doesn't normally happen, but it does. The neighbors on the other side of the fence comes knocking by. Doesn't normally happen, but it did. And, well, his barbecue plants went up in smoke, literally. He's left with charred sausages, nothing to provide for the family, busy running around trying to take care of the kids, whatnot. And now, you've got a couple of options, right? Do you look at him and maybe turn the music back up? Do you sit down and maybe just decide, like, we're just going to eat our burgers in peace? Do you maybe offer some sausages to a guy who's going to take 20 minutes to get his coals lit up on his grill? Or maybe do you do this? Do you invite him over for an impromptu barbecue at your place where the grill's already running? You go inside, you grab a couple of extra hot dogs, and you make it so that the barbecue bash happens together as one big family. That little scenario there, it's kind of a little bit of a picture of what we get to see Jesus doing today. And if you think about it, it actually happens all the time for us. And it goes unnoticed most of the time. It happens all the time where it's like the teacher who's going all day, right? She is giving and she is giving and giving, so much so that she has forgotten to eat. And so the only option she's got is, well, grab something quick out of the lunchbox, scarf it down really quick, and then get back after it. Why? Well, because her kids matter to her. Routine matters to her. So she's going to keep rolling. She's going to keep going. She's going to demonstrate. She's going to be filled with compassion for a people that need her right then and there. Or maybe it's like moms and dads, husbands and wives, students and teachers, right? Who have been going all day. And now it's the end of the day, and it doesn't seem like there's that much energy left to exhaust, to give out anything more. But what do? You give it. You spend a little bit of unhurried time to befriend someone else, to lend a listening ear to maybe a spouse or a child. You invest time in a relationship that matters. We see it happen time in and time out. And it's this miracle that's produced in us by Christ and His Word. It's this gut-wrenching, literally a gut punch of compassion that God creates in us through the work of the Holy Spirit, through this gospel message that we get to look at today. And it's the same thing that we see Jesus doing today, too. He and His disciples, they were exhausted. If you know anything about what comes right before the feeding of the 5,000, because that's where we're at, and we're not going to get into the feeding of the 5,000 today because we're going to focus in on Jesus and His compassion. But what comes before this is the disciples were out and about, and they were getting after it. They were preaching, they were teaching, they were healing, all via the power and the work of Christ and His Word. And they're exhausted. They were getting after it so much that they had forgotten to eat. And Jesus notices this. And so what does He do? He pulls them aside and He says, come and get some rest with me. And so they go off across the Sea of Galilee, but then all of a sudden, as tired as these men were, thousands of people running along the shore. And if you can picture it with me, what an incredible sight, right? Like, maybe in front there were those who just wanted to be around Jesus, just wanted to just listen to him speak. And then in the middle, you've got maybe the little children, right? Just tugging along, right? Going after it. And then after that, you've got the people who maybe have some disabilities, but they're still moving, right? They're still moving. And then finally in the back, maybe, just maybe, you've got people who are lame and crippled and being carried along. Thousands of people over to just get a glimpse of this guy, to be near him, to hear what he has to say. They're all exhausted. And yet what does Jesus do? He looks at the thousands and he has compassion on them. A gut punch, literally, where he looks at a people who might not deserve anything on their own, don't look beautiful by any means, outwardly. But he sees something about them, he sees their need, and he gives them everything that he is. Compassion is that feeling, right, that swells up in your chest. It's that feeling that when you see someone who's in a challenging situation, you see them and they don't look pretty by any means, right? On the outside, there's nothing about them in that moment that has actually warranted or constitutes the fact that they deserve help, right? They didn't bring anything to the table for it. And yet there is undeserved, unhurried love that fills the heart of the believer to look at that person and say, Christ for you. Christ for me and Christ for you. It's a beautiful thing. Drives Jesus to, after this lesson, feed 5,000 people with a couple of loaves of bread and some fish. Compassion. I got a question for you guys now. Exhausted, tired, and restless, how often do you find yourself immediately jumping to compassion? How often do you find yourself, after a long day and just a long schedule and a long life, thinking, I just want to sit back and rest. I just want to take a couple of hours to just relax. Or maybe it's just life in general, right? Maybe it's not necessarily just being around kids all day or being in the classroom or being at work. Maybe it's just life in general, being bombarded with everything. It's in those moments where we as human beings crave rest. But then what happens when God puts someone on that path? When God puts someone on your path who comes swarming in and they're in desperate need of help. They're in desperate need of something from you, from I. How often does it happen where, even if it's a complete stranger, we find ourselves thinking, how can I actually expend any more time in this moment? How in the world can I give anything more up of myself? I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm restless. In lifestyles that are full of fast schedules and just busy life in general, there's this temptation for us to respond to the needs of others. Maybe not with this extreme, profound emotional reaction of compassion, but maybe it's the opposite. Maybe sometimes, right? It's resentment, frustration, despair. Sometimes it's knowing the promises of the gospel, but then responding with, but those are for later. The gospel's for later. I need something now. You see, I know the Lord is my shepherd, but I still want. I know he makes me lie down in green pastures, but I still don't have enough for myself. I don't have enough green dollar bills. I don't have enough for my family's future. I know the Lord is my shepherd, and he leads me beside quiet waters, But what if he could just lead me in a direction where there is no more rejection, no more suffering, no more pain, no more hardships? Then maybe I could really rest. And then maybe, just maybe, I could actually give something to someone else. I could give the same compassion out to them. The Lord is my shepherd, but I still want. There's this temptation for us, day in, day out, to be able to know, yes, that Christ for me and Christ for someone else is the ultimate prize. But it's on those days right at the same time where the devil and his lies want us to believe that Christ hasn't done anything substantial for me just yet. And it's on those same days where Jesus looks at us. He looks at us in our sin. He looks at us in our discontentment. He looks at us who are helpless, lost, and he says, I'm here and I'm your good shepherd. It's our good shepherd who makes it so that we don't want. Our good shepherd who goes to the cross for us. And he actually does more than just what is substantial. He does and goes above all. He does the unthinkable. He has compassion on us. People who really don't bring anything to the table worth saving at all. People who, by no means, underneath the surface, look beautiful, look handsome, look like anything worth saving. He looks at us and he says, you are mine. He dies on the cross for you and for me. He rises from the grave and he leads us. He leads us to green pastures. To green pastures of peace and security, and knowing that he is preparing a home in heaven for us right now. Compassion from him who leads us beside quiet waters when there has been fast life and busy schedules. To remind us that he is with us and he's never going to leave us. The Lord is our shepherd who makes it so that we don't need anything else. We don't want anything else because his compassion consumes us. He does the unthinkable where he fights against brokenness, against sin, against the devil, and he wins. He wins. And he does it for the people here in our text too. When Jesus landed, he looks at a people who are like sheep without a shepherd, and it's a gut punch of compassion. And so what does he do? He loves them. And you think about that for just a second, for just 2 seconds. People without a shepherd, what does that look like? It's people who are alone, who are helpless, who are restless, who are afraid, who are oblivious to the dangers that come in life. And Jesus is there for them. He is there for us. Compassion and being filled with compassion. We have the ability to be filled with compassion and be there for others. But that ability only comes because Jesus had compassion for us first. Because he loves us. And you know what's best of all? We know exactly where we can find it at all times. We know exactly where to run to when we need to be filled up with compassion, to be able to spread it out and dish it out to anyone and everyone that we cross paths with, to anyone and everyone that God puts in our path during an exhausting week of life. It's right here in his word. It's right here for you and me. It's right here where, even when there are days where it feels like the promises aren't coming true, they are. They have. Because he has secured our salvation. He has taken care of all of our brokenness. And he is with us. He and his compassion for us. So my encouragement for you today is this. Even when nothing seems to be going your way, even when life feels like it's exhausting beyond end, even when it feels like there is nothing more to expend, because it happens. Run to his compassion. Run to his compassion and be filled up in it. Be filled up in what he's done for you. And then go and share that. Share that with whoever crosses you and your path. Share that with whoever God puts in your path this week, today, whatever it is. Share that with your husbands, with your wives. Share that compassion with your children. Share it with your neighbors. Share it with your coworkers. Share it. And never stop. And know that you've got the ability to do that because Jesus has filled you with his compassion. Amen. This time I'm going to ask you all to please stand, and we will use the words of the Nicene Creed